Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dugout podcast. I need to do a very quick DNC reaction episode. For those that might not know, right now in Chicago, Illinois, the Democratic National Convention is happening over the course of about 4 days, and thousands of people are gathering. Also, all sorts of leftists, radicals, revolutionaries are also gathering. And first, I'll just even say if you're watching the news, you're watching media, you're paying attention to social media, if you look at the mainstream coverage of what has been happening, you'll see, oh, like the reactions from the speeches and what discourse is happening. But if you go on It's Going Down or any of the like leftist social media accounts on Instagram, X, any of the social medias, you'll see that people are protesting. Pro-Palestinian protesters are breaching certain security perimeters. They've disrupted numerous events. There's a private Zionist event that pro-Palestinian protesters disrupted. And so there is a lot of dissent in the air. But I want to talk about what it was like watching the Democratic National Convention as someone that, and this is the context for me. I grew up with a stepdad that really enjoyed watching the news. He would watch the news and debate it, talk about it over dinner. I was in a household where he'd regularly talk about what he thought about what politicians were doing to his friends, to other people. My stepfather was very politically engaged, and for that reason, I really I don't know, I won't say I enjoy in taking the news, but I find it to be very stimulating because it's kind of a trait that I admire, but I'm also an anarchist. I've been a movement journalist. I don't trust mainstream media. I don't like mainstream media. I think there's a lot of marketing and fallacies and lies. And so, with all of that in mind, I sat down with a few friends and I watched the Democratic National Convention last night. And I think it's these conventions and watching them, watching the kind of political theater show extensively, like all the lights and the production, it activates something in me a deep anger. And I just, there were there were so many moments where I was just floored. Michelle Obama spoke, Barack Obama spoke. Michelle Obama, the one of the worst parts of the whole convention for me was when Michelle Obama was saying, "Oh, you want to talk about Kamala Harris? I think someone needs to tell Donald Trump it's a black job. It's a black job. It's a black. Oh my." Michelle Obama herself said years ago, the White House was built by slaves. It's one of those moments where I just look up and I realize, oh, black people got into office. Barack Obama got into office, represented this black hope, and then there became this new elite black category of politician that it's also the emotional marketing of politicians in general. Like you could be a horrible, mediocre white man, but as soon as you leave office, like George Bush or Biden, it's like, oh my God, they're so sweet. Oh my God. So black people, what black? It's a black job. Not every black person wants to work in the fucking White House. Not every black person wants to work for the state. And to make it cutesy, like someone needs to tell Trump that it makes my skin crawl. It makes my skin crawl. And what it really reminds me of is like when you're black, like I grew up in a mostly black city, in a mostly black neighborhood. And then I went to university and I went to a PWI, predominantly white institution. And it reminded me of when you're at like around a bunch of white people and someone white person says something fucked up about blackness and you might not even disagree with them, but because it's a white person, you almost have to like double down and like, yeah, of course it's a black job. I'm like, the White House is a literal direct manifestation of Western imperialism. But Obama was known as deporter in chief. He joked about the water in Flint, Michigan being polluted. He denigrated Baltimore protesters. And when I think about all of the money involved in politics, all of the lobbying, all the super PACs, all the behind the scenes promises, to say that working in the White House, being the president of the United States is a black job, it's basically saying that we need a new representation for this imperialism. And this goes to my point about how identity and blackness is weaponized, but also how these very sinister things are marketed to us, and it's these underlying dog whistles. And the dog whistles were definitely there in Obama's speech. Like when they're talking about the middle class, it's about more than the middle class. When they're talking about unity, they're talking about unity towards militaristic intervention, towards foreign co-optation of other freedom struggles, towards building more cop cities, towards funding Israel for billions more dollars. When all of this progressive language is used, it's it's this very sinister dog whistle where America can claim progressivism despite the fact that all of the progressive reforms and movements and kind of ideologies that we have were fought for by marginalized people that were getting their asses beaten by the American government. And so how can a government or a politician do evil, do damage, make compromises that lead to unimaginable amounts of harm, and then there is no process of public or individual forgiveness or restoration, and then they get to go on stage and market themselves to us? Like, think about the fact that AOC was this great hope and called out Biden for not for being complicit in this genocide, and then now is taking like cute photos with him, like selfies. It is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And the main other thing that really gets me is just how identity is weaponized, weaponized, weaponized. Bringing up black women, different kinds of women, having Michelle Obama talk, the way they were zooming in on on the black women's faces who were crying, crying, crying. Why do we need to be put on such a pedestal? Why do we need to be marketed back to ourselves? And I think about it this way: you can pay attention to what America is marketing to you, or you can pay attention to what it is spending its money on. What the DNC was marketing to us is, we're the good side of history. Kamala cares about the economy. She's progressive enough, but she's direct and is qualified and is the right candidate. And we can't go back in time where they took away our voting rights. Like, Kamala is how we fight fascism. But when you actually look at the money, cop cities are being built in over a dozen cities around the country, if not more. And a revolutionary Tortuguita was unalived by the police while protesting the Cop City movement. Sonia Macy was unalived in her own home after calling the police. Kamala Harris was able to raise $80 million in like what, 24 to 48 hours after she announced her presidency. She didn't have a platform for however long it's been until like a day or two ago, but will still speak towards Israel's right to defend itself. We have 1/4 of the world's prison population. We aren't scaling back in how we're investing in militarism. And what I see is that we're being marketed a version of America that actually cares about its own people. When if you look at what America is doing, it doesn't actually care about its own people. Like, and with all of that, I just think I guess I'm thinking of the phrase um political and media literacy, like how they talk about like people need social media literacy, like they need to understand like what is fake and what is not. And I think we also need a political media literacy. Like I as someone that has done speeches, that has done rallies, that has done events where you have to get up in front of a group of people and to push a certain kind of emotional narrative or a tonality, or to manifest a certain kind of emotion or way of thinking, you do have to be very careful about what words you choose, how you frame things, how you speak to things. So much of the language was unity, 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 like we're on the right side of history. But wouldn't the right side of history be talking about Congo right now? Wouldn't the right side of history be talking about Bangladesh? Wouldn't it be talking about Palestine? Wouldn't it be talking about all of the various atrocities that are happening around the world? And so we're also being marketed a version of justice that always allows us to be the victor, that always allows us to be privileged enough to need to protect ourselves. And I say privileged very carefully because I do think people deserve to navigate the political systems offered to them, but I also think there is a definitive power imbalance in the world. There's a definitive hierarchy of power where the US has so much money invested into militarism, so much money invested into foreign intervention, so much money invested in coal and gas and all of these industries that also fuel and fund and help us economically during war times. But most Americans don't have a relationship with how we oppose that. Most Americans don't have a deep relationship with the specifics of the amount of suffering that we both import and export. And I wonder, what is our process of disentangling ourselves from this? One way of approaching things or thinking about things is recently we had the opportunity to interview a former Black Panther Party member on the Dugout, and it was really cool and interesting and fun, humbling to be able to talk to someone intergenerationally who's done that kind of work. And I asked about, like, oh, what's your advice to younger folks that are dealing with certain kind of movement spaces where you might have to work or be in solidarity with people that have a different relationship to the state and maybe are more afraid or are willing to like kind of fold to the state's logic for whatever reasons. What advice would you have for navigating that space? And this person was very clear. They were like, we dealt with our own shit. We didn't really know what Quinto Pro was. We had our ideas, but we had a mass movement that arose from the particular political context that we were in. And this person was just saying, you have a different political context. There are shared like aspects of that, but you have your own challenge. So I can offer you what we did or what we thought, but I can't tell you what to do. And it's not like I was exactly asking this person to tell me what to do, but it was very interesting and telling because I started thinking about the 60s and 70s a bit differently because I was thinking, okay, there were anti-war sentiments on a new level because of the way that the Vietnam War was exposed to Americans through broadcast journalism. There was Black liberation struggles, whether it be the civil rights movement or the Black Power movement, and there was kind of the um, gender, sexual revolution, and so all of these things were happening in a more sustained fashion over years. And I was kind of like, oh, well, how do we get a mass mobilization movement now? This is what I was kind of talking with folks last night when I was watching the DNC. And I did kind of also pontificate. I was like, oh, if you look at the past 10 or 20 years of US politics, we have gone through numerous war times. There have been a lot of anti-war sentiments. There has been different movements related to class consciousness, like Occupy, different white anti-fascist or anti-racist coalitions have arose over the last number of years, especially during Trump's presidency in Charlottesville and all of that. Black Lives Matter has been a continuous flashpoint at different periods of time over the last 10 to 15 years. And now, once again, the US is funding a genocide. And I think a lot of Americans are really awakened parasocially to what is happening. And that to me is, it's almost a very similar set of conditions to the 60s and 70s. Of course, we're in a different time period, but I think about the fact that if leftists, if revolutionaries, if radicals really push the needle in more dynamic ways with the collective knowledge of these different movements, with a deeper sense of solidarity, with a deeper approach to anti-repression work, um, I think there's a lot of possibility, especially if we resort to more tactics of disruption, more tactics of offering alternatives, viable alternatives that can help support people for their needs as they engage in these alternative political processes. So I think there is a kind of vision of change that I am working through while I'm seeing all these things and intaking the news. But the DNC, it really activates it because I was watching it last night floored, flabbergasted, appalled, like next to no mention of Palestine, putting all these black people on stage, zooming in on all these old black women, mentioning black mothers and fathers and godfathers. We're not going back in time. I really question, are black people worried about going back in time, or are we more worried about being a part of whatever success or privilege America can offer to us on a global level, even while America is literally unaliving us within its boundaries and borders. So there's just so much that bothers me about all this. There's so much that bothers me about all this. There is so much that bothers me about all this. And I really just I respect people that can't watch it, but I do want to challenge folks that listen to this podcast. Like there is a strange opportunity to kind of see the emotional and political marketing up close in some of these moments during these speeches. I mean, AOC, you put AOC up there? Oh my God. Yeah. So maybe I'll do more quick election episodes like this. Let me know what you think of this idea, and I'll probably add a few links and videos and articles to the show notes. But the DNC was a trip. The DNC was a trip. Thank you for listening.